Look at the screen in front of you. Picture a grand marble lobby bathed in warm, golden light. A doorman in tailored attire and spotless white gloves steps forward to open the door of a polished black luxury sedan. Inside the private elevator, ultra-high net worth individuals, tech founders, and international celebrities ride up to suites that cost more for a single night than most hardworking families spend on rent in a year. To anyone standing on the street, this looks like the absolute apex of capitalism, a perpetual money-printing machine running smoothly around the clock. Now, look behind that curtain. Because, in the exact same city, inside two identical properties featuring the exact same gold leaf ceilings, the same Italian marble, and the same white glove butler service, you will find two completely opposite financial realities. One property generates millions in distributable cash flow. The other, charging well over $1,000 per room night, is quietly bleeding millions of dollars every single year, pushing its ownership group to the brink of foreclosure. Welcome to the brutal, hyper-leveraged, and profoundly misunderstood economics of owning a five-star luxury hotel. Today, we are taking apart this entire multi-million-dollar illusion. We will break down why building a modern luxury tower in a gateway city now costs up to $2 million per key, how major global hospitality brands collect risk-free management fees while property owners absorb all the downside, why an empty room at midnight permanently destroys wealth, and how savvy institutional investors use cost segregation, debt refinancing, and real estate arbitrage to extract fortunes from an asset class that frequently loses money on operations. Before we analyze the capital stacks and interest payments, we must dismantle the most common misconception in hospitality. Most aspiring investors assume that a five-star hotel is created by installing high-end finishes, expensive drapery, imported Egyptian cotton sheets, hand-blown chandeliers, and a tranquil spa scented with eucalyptus. In the ruthless world of international property ratings, physical architecture is merely the baseline table stakes. Organizations like the Forbes Travel Guide evaluate luxury properties against up to 900 distinct, unyielding standards. And here is the paradox that catches almost every outsider off guard. The physical building and its lavish fixtures account for roughly 25% of that ultimate rating. The remaining 75% has absolutely nothing to do with marble or architecture. It is entirely operational. It is an ongoing, high-stakes theatrical performance that never ends. It measures whether the front desk agent greets an arriving guest by name before looking at a screen. It measures whether room service arrives within a precise time frame, perfectly temperature-controlled, with fresh flowers positioned on the tray. It measures whether phone inquiries are answered within 3 rings by a human being whose tone conveys genuine, effortless willingness to solve complex personal requests. Because luxury is an endless performance, it requires an unprecedented labor commitment. In a standard budget or limited service hotel, operations run smoothly with approximately 1/2 of an employee per guest room. In a verified 5-star luxury property, that ratio skyrockets to anywhere between 1.5 to 3 full-time employees for every single guest room in the inventory. Think about what that structure means when midnight arrives. At 2 o'clock in the morning, when 90% of the guest rooms are quiet and the lobby is completely deserted, the standard does not drop by a single millimeter. The night auditors, overnight engineering staff, security detail, room service chefs, and concierge team must remain fully deployed at their posts. You are paying for capacity, not utilization. And that fundamental reality creates a fixed cost structure that will either build an empire or crush and balance sheet the moment economic headwinds arrive. To understand why luxury hotel ownership is so fragile, you have to look at the staggering capital required before a single guest ever receives a room key. Industry benchmark metrics, such as those published in comprehensive development cost surveys, show that the median cost to build a luxury hotel in the United States routinely exceeds $1 million per room. However, in major gateway cities Tier 1 markets like New York, London, Tokyo, or San Francisco, that number regularly crosses $2 million per key. If a developer sets out to build a modern 200-room luxury hotel in a central metropolitan district, The total capital expenditure routinely ranges between $200 million and $400 million. Where does that money actually go? It gets absorbed into structural buckets that surprise even experienced commercial developers. Premium urban land acquisition alone can easily swallow 10% or more of the entire budget. Hard construction costs the raw structural steel, reinforced concrete, high-efficiency glass curtain walls, and complex mechanical, electrical, and plumbing infrastructure eat up roughly 68% of the total capital stack. Then comes furniture, fixtures, and equipment, known in the trade as FF&E, the bespoke mattresses, commercial-grade kitchen line equipment, spa facilities, custom cabinetry, and high-end lighting fixtures absorb another 11%. The remaining balance gets consumed by architectural design fees, municipal permitting, environmental clearances, pre-opening marketing, staff training, payroll, and mandatory contingency reserves to absorb the inevitable construction cost overruns that plague complex urban developments. Now, consider how this massive pile of capital is assembled. Commercial real estate developers rarely write a personal check for $400 million. They structure the deal using high-leverage financing, combining senior bank debt, mezzanine loans, equity partners, and institutional backers. In an elevated interest rate environment, borrowing that volume of capital carries a brutal carrying cost. If a project carries $200 million in senior debt at an interest rate between 6 and 8%, the annual debt service obligation ranges between $12 million and $16 million every single year. That is $32,000 to $44,000 per day in pure interest expense. That bill arrives every morning before you have paid a single housekeeper, before you have purchased a single luxury amenity, and before you have turned on a single air conditioning unit. That fixed financial obligation is the permanent weight the property carries from day one. Here is a fundamental truth of real estate. The exact same physical asset, built with identical materials and operating under identical service standards, can have wildly different economic outcomes depending entirely on its geographical micromarket. In Midtown Manhattan, a five-star hotel can command an average daily rate, or ADR, exceeding $400 to $600 per night during normal operating cycles. Place that exact same physical building in a secondary regional market with lower corporate density and fewer international travelers, and the market may cap your room rates at $250 per night. That gap in daily pricing power is not a minor operational detail. It is the absolute dividing line between financial solvency and structural bankruptcy. Construction costs do not drop proportionally just because you build in a smaller market. Hard construction expenses in Tier 1 cities can run over $300 per square foot, while secondary markets might hover around $260. You pay a massive baseline cost to construct luxury anywhere, but only premier gateway cities provide the density of ultra-wealthy clientele required to support top-tier room pricing. To evaluate whether a project is viable, veteran hotel developers use a classic industry rule of thumb. For every $1,000 spent in total development cost per key, the property must generate $1 in average daily rate at a stabilized annual occupancy of 65%. Apply that mathematical rule to modern realities. If your hotel costs $1 million per room to build, you need to achieve a stabilized, year-round average daily rate of $1,000 per night just to service your capital stack and achieve a reasonable return. Yet, across major luxury markets in North America, the average luxury room rate frequently hovers around $400. Do the math. A property built at modern luxury development costs, relying purely on standard hotel room rentals, is structurally broken from the moment the concrete cures. This mathematical gap explains why almost every major luxury hotel constructed over the past 2 decades is not just a hotel. It is a high-end mixed-use development. Developers build luxury residential condominiums, private branded residences, or exclusive membership clubs directly on top of or adjacent to the hotel structure. By selling those luxury residential units off-plan before construction completes, the developer generates massive upfront cash inflows. That residential profit is immediately used to pay down senior construction debt, drastically shrinking the leverage on the hotel component. The hotel, in essence, is financially subsidized by the high-margin real estate sales next door. The hotel provides the prestige and room service amenities that justify astronomical residential prices, while the residential sales save the hotel from debt overload. When the average traveler stays at a Ritz-Carlton, a Four Seasons, a St. Regis, or a Waldorf Astoria, they assume that the global brand painted on the front facade owns the land, erected the building, and employs the staff. In 95% of cases, that assumption is entirely wrong. Global hospitality giants like Marriott International, Hilton Worldwide, and Hyatt Hotels long ago transitioned to an asset-light business model. They are brand operators and franchisors, not property landlords. They do not want to own illiquid, capital-intensive real estate, carry heavy debt liabilities, or manage local property tax assessments. The actual physical buildings are owned by a completely different class of institutional investors, sovereign wealth funds from the Middle East and Asia looking for trophy real estate assets to store generational wealth. Real estate investment trusts, or REITs, pooling capital from public markets. Private equity firms targeting turnaround opportunities. Large corporate pension funds, and ultra-wealthy family offices. The relationship between the building owner and the brand operator is governed by a legally binding, heavily negotiated contract known as a hotel management agreement. Under this arrangement, the brand takes total operational control of the property, enforcing its strict service guidelines and hiring management staff, while the property owner bears 100% of the financial risk and pays every single operating bill. To understand how lucrative this is for the brand and how burdensome it can be for the owner, you have to look at how fees are extracted from gross top-line revenue. Long before the property owner calculates net operating income or pays mortgage interest, the brand takes multiple non-negotiable cuts. First, the base management fee. The brand collects between 2 and 4% of total gross operating revenue. Every dollar brought in through room rentals, dining, spa treatments, and valet parking is assessed this fee, regardless of whether the hotel is operating at a profit or incurring a massive cash loss. Second, royalty and license fees. To display the trademarked logo on the building and use the brand's proprietary operational playbooks, the owner pays another 3 to 5% of gross room revenue. Third, centralized marketing and reservation contributions. To fund global advertising campaigns and maintain global booking engines, the brand levies an additional 1 to 4% assessment. Fourth, loyalty program assessments. Participating in global guest rewards programs brings in frequent travelers, but the owner pays roughly 2 to 6% on every booking made by a rewards member. When you stack these fees together, the brand extracts 10 to 15% of gross top-line revenue before a single dollar reaches the owner's bank account to pay staff salaries, electricity bills, or mortgage debt. While the agreement may include an incentive management fee which rewards the brand with a percentage of actual operating profit, once certain hurdles are met, the baseline fees ensure the operator stays profitable even when the owner is facing foreclosure. Now let us turn to the single largest line item on the operational side of the ledger: labor. A 5-star hotel is not a static property asset. It is a live 24-hour human operation requiring an army of specialized personnel. In a luxury setting, total labor and payroll-related expenses absorb between 32 and 38% of every single dollar of gross revenue generated by the property. It is a massive, highly rigid cost center that cannot simply be turned off when guest check-ins slow down. To see how this plays out on the ground, look at a single operational department: housekeeping. Consider a 200-room luxury hotel running at a healthy 80% occupancy rate. On any given morning, exactly 160 guest rooms must be stripped, deep cleaned, sanitized, and meticulously reset to flawless brand standards. In a budget or mid-scale hotel, a housekeeper might be allocated 15 to 20 minutes to quickly turn over a room. In a 5-star property, brand guidelines dictate that cleaning a single luxury room thoroughly takes approximately 45 minutes of focused manual effort. Every linen fold must be precise, every marble surface polished to a mirror shine, every amenity replenished, and every fixture inspected. An 8-hour work shift contains 480 minutes. Accounting for mandatory breaks and morning briefings, a room attendant can clean roughly 8 to 9 rooms per shift. To clean 160 rooms in a single day, the hotel must deploy at least 18 to 20 room attendants on the floor every single day of the week. However, deploying 20 workers per day does not mean you only employ 20 people. Human beings do not work 365 days a year. They have scheduled days off, take vacation time, require sick leave, and experience turnover. To ensure that 20 attendants physically show up on the floor every single morning of the year, the housekeeping department must carry roughly 28 to 30 full-time employees on its permanent payroll just for line-level room cleaning. And line-level attendants are only the base of the pyramid. You must employ floor supervisors to inspect every turned-over room against the brand's 900-point checklist, typically one supervisor for every 10 attendants. You need an executive housekeeper, assistant managers, linen runners moving heavy loads between floors, and dedicated commercial laundry staff operating high-capacity washers and presses around the clock. When you scale this detailed labor deployment model across every operational department in the building, front office, concierge, valet parking, engineering, kitchen staff, banquet service, spa operations, security, and administrative sales, the payroll bill becomes a massive, mostly fixed monthly obligation that burns cash regardless of occupancy. Here is a concept that fundamentally separates hoteliers from traditional retail business operators: the total perishability of inventory. If a consumer electronics manufacturer produces a high-definition television and fails to sell it today, that television sits safely on a warehouse pallet. It can be sold tomorrow, next week, or next month. The inventory retains its value over time, carrying only minor storage costs. A hotel room night possesses zero shelf life. If room 304 sits empty on Tuesday night, that potential revenue vanishes forever at midnight. You cannot store Tuesday night's inventory and sell it on Wednesday. The capacity to generate revenue during those specific 24 hours is permanently destroyed. This absolute perishability is the core reason why a luxury hotel operating at 60% occupancy is not merely underperforming, it is suffering permanent revenue destruction on 40% of its yield potential every single night of the year. To fight this continuous decay of inventory, modern luxury properties rely on sophisticated revenue management systems driven by real-time dynamic pricing algorithms. A 5-star hotel does not print a fixed price list and slip it into a drawer. Room rates are recalibrated continuously throughout the day based on dozens of predictive data feeds. The algorithm monitors flight booking volumes into local international airports, tracks major corporate conference announcements, evaluates regional weather patterns, scrapes competitor pricing data across online travel agencies, and measures the property's own booking velocity relative to historical multi-year trends. A standard executive king room in a major financial center might be priced at $350 on a cold, quiet Tuesday in February when corporate travel is muted. That exact same room, with no physical changes whatsoever, will be automatically priced at $750 on a Thursday during a major pharmaceutical convention. And during a citywide sporting event or New Year's Eve celebration, the pricing algorithm will push that exact room to $1,500 or higher. This is not arbitrary gouging. It is real-time mathematical yield optimization designed to capture the absolute maximum revenue per available room before the clock strikes midnight and the asset expires. If you analyze a luxury hotel's financial income statement, you will notice something fascinating. Guest rooms generate the highest gross profit margin frequently, 80 to 85 cents of operating profit on every dollar of room revenue. But rooms have a hard physical ceiling. You cannot magically create 50 extra rooms on a night when demand surges. The true hidden profit engines, the businesses that separate wildly profitable luxury hotels from those struggling to service debt, are high-margin ancillary revenue streams that standard guests rarely consider. banquets, corporate conventions, and event catering. Consider a high-end luxury wedding hosted over a summer weekend. Venue rental fees, customized fine dining catering, premium bar packages, specialized floral and lighting arrangements coordinated through hotel vendors, and dedicated guest room blocks can easily generate several $100,000 in top-line revenue from a single multi-day event. More importantly, banquet revenue carries far lower operational risk than individual room bookings. Event contracts are executed months or even years in advance, backed by substantial non-refundable cash deposits. To protect its operating margin, the hotel enforces rigid contractual milestones. 30 days prior to the event, the client provides a preliminary head count. 10 days out, a guaranteed guest minimum is locked in. 72 hours before the first plate is served, the final guest count becomes absolute. Even if half the invited guests fail to show up on the day of the event, the hotel bills at 80 to 100% of the contracted per-person value. The kitchen staff never absorbs the financial penalty of last-minute attendee cancellations. Corporate meetings and industry conferences provide even more consistent, predictable cash flow. Multinational corporations hosting multi-day retreats pay premium rates for grand ballrooms, executive breakout spaces, advanced audiovisual equipment packages, continuously replenished coffee breaks, and fully catered lunches. Because corporate travel budgets fund these invoices rather than individual consumer wallets, corporate clients exhibit low price sensitivity. They generate high-volume, reliable revenue right in the middle of the week, perfectly balancing out weekend leisure patterns. And what about the most expensive room in the entire tower, the presidential suite? Positioned on the penthouse level, spanning thousands of square feet with private elevator access, these suites are listed at $10,000, $25,000, or even $50,000 per night. The secret financial reality of the presidential suite is that it is rarely built to generate steady daily room revenue. It exists as a strategic marketing weapon and brand halo. The suite's lavish interiors appear in luxury lifestyle magazines, architecture features, and viral social media posts, generating public exposure that no traditional advertising budget could ever buy. When a visiting head of state, a world-famous musician, or an international business tycoon checks into the suite, the surrounding media coverage establishes the hotel's prestige across the globe. Thousands of aspiring travelers will never spend $20,000 on a suite, but they will happily pay $400 for a standard room just to walk through the same lobby and at 100 absorb that shared atmosphere of elite luxury. There is a massive operational expenditure item that romantic observers of hotel ownership almost entirely ignore: utility energy consumption. A full-service luxury hotel containing 200 to 300 guest rooms, extensive spa facilities, multiple commercial kitchens, heated swimming pools, and continuous common area climate control is a massive energy-consuming industrial complex. A property of this scale routinely consumes between 80,000 and 170,000 kilowatt-hours of electricity every single month. Alongside massive volumes of natural gas and water, heating, hot water systems, and commercial laundry account for 35 to 55% of total property energy consumption. Luxury guests expect instant, unlimited, high-pressure hot water in their showers, heated swimming pools maintained at precise temperatures year-round, and steam rooms running continuously. Air conditioning and complex HVAC circulation systems swallow another 10 to 25%. Commercial laundries processing thousands of heavy linen sheets, plush bath towels, and luxury bathrobes daily add another massive energy layer. In European markets, energy costs can reach 65 to 110 British pounds per occupied room night. In North American markets, utility bills represent one of the fastest-growing operational threats on the income statement. Crucially, utility costs carry immense fixed-load inertia. If guest occupancy drops from 80% down to 30% during a travel slump, your energy bill does not drop by 50%. The grand lobby must still be illuminated and climate-controlled. The swimming pools must remain heated. The central boilers must maintain system pressure, and the building management systems must run around the clock. This dynamics illustrates the core financial characteristic of luxury hospitality: extreme operating leverage. High operating leverage means a business carries high fixed operating costs and low variable costs. When travel demand is booming and occupancy reaches 85%, every incremental dollar of revenue flows straight to the bottom line, generating massive cash profits. But when macroeconomic downturns arrive, high operating leverage turns completely toxic. When occupancy plummets during a recession, geopolitical event, or global health crisis, top-line revenue collapses instantly. Yet, your monthly mortgage interest payments, property tax assessments, brand management fees, base utility loads, structural maintenance reserves, and core administrative payroll remain completely unchanged. Because costs cannot shrink proportionally with falling demand, operating margins do not simply narrow, they implode instantly into massive net operating losses. This fixed financial structure explains why luxury hotels are among the very first commercial real estate assets to default during systemic economic shocks. Why would sophisticated institutional investors, private equity groups, and family offices continue to deploy hundreds of millions of dollars into an asset class burdened by high debt, rigid labor costs, risk-free operator fees, and brutal operating leverage? The answer lies in understanding that for elite investors, a luxury hotel is not merely an operational business designed to collect room revenue. It is a multi-layered financial vehicle built for tax-sheltered wealth preservation, debt optimization, and long-term capital appreciation. First, consider the power of accelerated tax depreciation through cost segregation. Under standard corporate tax codes, commercial real estate structures are depreciated over a slow 39-year timeline. However, a luxury hotel contains thousands of short-life interior components that deteriorate rapidly under heavy guest usage. By conducting an engineering-based cost segregation study, property tax specialists reclassify specific building components, custom cabinetry, high-end carpeting, specialty lighting fixtures, security systems, spa installations, and decorative features into 5-year, 7-year, or 15-year depreciation schedules. Under provisions like bonus depreciation, owners can write off these massive capital expenditures almost immediately against their broader income portfolios. This creates huge paper tax losses in the early years of ownership, sheltering millions of dollars of real cash flow from federal and state taxation. Second, look at strategic debt refinancing. When a new luxury hotel opens, it carries high-risk construction debts with elevated interest rates. As the property stabilizes its operations over 3 to 5 years, establishes a proven revenue track record, and builds consistent occupancy, its risk profile drops dramatically in the eyes of institutional lenders. The ownership group can then refinance that initial construction debt into long-term, lower-cost commercial mortgage-backed securities or institutional debt. During market expansions, owners frequently execute cash-out refinancings, borrowing against the increased capital value of the property to pull tens of millions of dollars of tax-free capital out of the asset, returning equity to investors without triggering a taxable property sale. Finally, there is long-term capital appreciation and gateway arbitrage. Land in prime metropolitan districts or world-class resort destinations is strictly finite. Over a 10 to 20-year holding period, the underlying real estate value appreciates substantially, driven by inflation, land scarcity, and barrier-to-entry zoning restrictions. An institutional investor who acquires a trophy hotel utilizes accelerated depreciation to shelter cash flows, executes strategic debt refinancings to retrieve initial equity, and ultimately sells the stabilized asset during a peak real estate cycle, can generate extraordinary internal rates of return, even if the hotel's operational yield looks razor-thin on a month-to-month basis. To see the complete picture of how thin the line is between success and ruin, let us run the actual balance sheet math on a hypothetical 200-room luxury hotel in a major American city like Chicago. Suppose total development cost reached $200 million. The ownership group structured the capital stack with $140 million in debt at a 7% interest rate. That creates a non-negotiable annual debt service bill of $9.8 million. Now, consider scenario A strong market year. The hotel achieves a 75% average occupancy rate with a strong average daily rate of $450. Rooms generate $24 million in top-line revenue. Food, beverage, banquets, spa, and ancillary services contribute another $8 million. Total gross revenue reaches $32 million. Where does that $32 million go? Payroll and employee benefits absorb $11 million. Energy and utilities take $2 million. Global brand fees management, royalty, and marketing assessments extract $3.5 million. Insurance, real estate, property taxes, and general operating overhead swallow $4 million. You transfer $1.6 million into mandatory FF and ME escrow reserves for future renovations. Your net operating income before debt service sits at roughly $9.9 million. Then, the lender takes its cut, $9.8 million in annual interest payments. Your net cash flow at the end of a triumphant year on a $200 million asset? Exactly $100,000. Now, run scenario B, a mild travel slump. Occupancy softens from 75% down to 55%. Average daily rate compresses to $375. Gross revenue falls to $22 million. Because your labor baseline, utility infrastructure, property taxes, insurance, and brand fees are mostly fixed, costs do not fall proportionally. Your net operating income drops to $7 million, but your bank still demands its full $9.8 million interest payment. You finish the year with a multi-million-dollar net cash operating loss, requiring the equity partners to write emergency capital calls just to keep the property out of foreclosure. That mathematical dynamic is the ultimate reality of owning a five-star hotel. It is not a passive cash printing machine. It is a hyper-leveraged, high-stakes financial chess game where structural capital architecture, debt terms, tax strategy, and real estate positioning matter infinitely more than the color of the lobby drapery or the brand of champagne in the minibar. Behind every polished marble floor, every white glove greeting, and every chandelier glowing softly in an empty lobby at 2 o'clock in the morning, that is the financial machine that actually drives the luxury hospitality industry.